Greetings, I'm Hondo, and this is my review of the Darkglass Electronics Vintage Ultra V2 pedal. This version is the one with the aux in. This pedal functions as a DI, so I'm just going to be running straight from my Modern Vintage MVP4 straight into the pedal, then into Ableton. So just like everything else Darkglass makes, this pedal is built rock solid and it looks really slick and really modern. It's got the soft switches on here, which I like a lot for the foot switches. I'm starting to want that on all my pedals at this point. And I think if this were my first Darkglass pedal, I'd probably be ranting and raving about how good the build quality is and how cool it looks. But I think this is my third or fourth piece of Darkglass equipment I've had in my studio. So at this point, I just kind of expect it all to be built really well and to look really awesome, and this one is no exception. So there are lots of controls on this pedal, but it's pretty easy to use. Starting all the way on the upper left-hand side, you have your master volume. Then to the right, you have a clean and driven blend knob. Then to the right of that, you have a level control that's just specifically for the driven sound, which is nice. Then all the way over on the right, you have the drive knob, which controls how much gain you have. Then right beneath that row, there's two switches labeled attack and grunt. The attack basically changes the response in the upper end of the signal, so you can have it in the top position, it's just a flat response. Then right beneath that, you get a nice edgy boost in like the upper mid-range treble area. And then all the way in the bottom position, it kind of rolls off the highs, which is really nice for a more kind of like old school drive sound. Then over on the right, you have a grunt switch, which controls how much low end is getting driven. And this one's really powerful. In the top position, it gets a nice boost to the low end, so you get that big saturated low end sound. And then in the middle, you get a roll off. So if you want to have like a really tight kind of sound, that does a good job with that, rolling the low end off to kind of tighten up the sound. And then all the way at the bottom, you get a flat response. The second row of knobs is the EQ, so it's just bass, low mids, high mids, and treble. And then the two switches below that row control where the frequency centers are for the low mids and high mids. So on the low mid, you get a choice of 500, 1000, or 250 hertz. And in the high mid, you get a choice of 1.5 kilohertz, 3 kilohertz, or 750 hertz. Then you have your two foot switches down at the bottom. You can bypass this pedal entirely, or you can just turn the distortion on and off, which is really cool. So if you just turn the distortion off, you get to still use the EQ, which is very cool. And you also get to use the cab sim. And speaking of the cab sim, over on the left-hand side of the pedal, you have your XLR output, which is the only output that the cabinet impulse response is on, so that's good to know. And then you have the cab sim button, which turns your impulse response on and off. Then on the right hand side of the pedal, you have a micro USB jack, and then the ground lift for the DI. And then on the top of the pedal, you have your input and output, and there's an aux in for if you want to run something like off your phone and off of an iPad into the pedal for you to practice with, and you can use the headphone jack to play through the pedal and use it as a headphone amp. So if you need to practice without having any real volume around, you can do that, no problem. So I reached out a while back to Darkglass to see if they would send me a Vintage Ultra to do a video on, and they agreed. So thank you guys, that's awesome. And the reason I asked to check this pedal out is because a lot of people kind of look at Darkglass stuff and they say like, oh, you know, it has this like modern metal type of sound to it. And I thought that out of all the pedals, this one would probably be the one that would be the most kind of versatile and the most able to use in a whole bunch of different genres that like aren't metal related. And I still think that that's true after spending a couple of weeks with this and using it on a couple of different sessions. I found that using the EQ and being able to load in different cabinet simulations and the attack and grunt switches, like all those different things led to me being able to kind of get whatever drive sound I was going for at the time. And I'm not going to say that this one pedal does every single drive sound you'll ever need, but if you're kind of like in the moment and trying to get towards a particular type of drive sound, the controls on the Vintage Ultra makes it really easy for you to kind of like intuitively kind of get there. So if somebody says like, oh, you know, I want kind of like a bigger old school sound, it's like, okay, you know, you want bigger sound, so more low end, more low mids, old school, less treble. So you know, you can use the attack switch and the grunt switch and the EQ and kind of get there really quickly, and then keep the kind of creative process moving or keep the rehearsal moving without you having to like fidget with like 4 or 5 different pedals or whatever. So for that reason alone, this thing is just excellent. So going into using this pedal, I thought that I was going to be annoyed by the clean blend, because typically I don't like clean blends in a lot of pedals. If you're in my Discord or if you've seen a lot of my other videos, you probably heard me talk about the fact that I think that clean blends tend to like smear mid-range and kind of take some of the aggression out of a lot of your drive sounds. But this pedal actually doesn't really do that, so that's really awesome and a pleasant surprise. If there was one thing that I would ask for on this pedal, it would be presets, because there's so many different sounds that you can get out of this pedal that it would be really cool. Say for instance, if you had a slightly past clean sound and then, you know, a solid overdrive and then the setting with the gain kind of like maxed out and going crazy, it would be cool to just kind of be able to recall those quickly instead of having to like switch the knobs really fast. The Darkglass Atom has that, for instance. I don't even know if that's possible on this pedal, but if it is possible, that would be super cool as an option, because it would allow you to quickly call tones back up kind of on the fly, and that would be super neat. But regardless, this pedal sounds fantastic, and it's probably, like honestly, probably one of my top 3 drive pedals. If you can guess the other 2 pedals down in the comments, I'll give you a bunch of extra entries for my 3,000 subscriber giveaway, which is hopefully coming up pretty soon. That's going to be a big one, so stay tuned. For the bonus clips with this pedal, this thing sounds really fantastic with a pick, so I wanted to show off what that sounds like. Also, I wanted to show off how mellow you can make it sound if you're trying to go for like a more like a softer, more old school type of mid-range heavy drive. So I used my P-Bass with flats for that. And then also, this is a cool drive for kind of like lead-ish type sounds where you just want like that little bit of extra edge. So I combined this with my new Chris Seldon Ranger 632 with some cool effects and stuff on it to kind of give you an idea of what this can sound like when you're trying to be a little bit more on the pretty side. Let me know if you dig any of the sounds down in the comments. Like I mentioned earlier, this pedal is easily one of my favorite drives. It just sounds fantastic, and it's built really well, so you know it's going to hold up over time. That said, it still can kind of give you a little bit of sticker shock. At the time of me making this video, I think this pedal with the aux-in version, that one is $449 if I'm not mistaken, and that is a lot of money. You know, just objectively, it's a lot of money. And then if you compare it to like the Darkglass Atom, which has more features and is only $50 more expensive, I can see how some people would start to, you know, kind of think like, okay, this pedal's like overpriced. But there's a couple of things to consider. One, it's an EQ. It's also a headphone amp. It's also a DI, and you can load impulse responses into it. And then on top of that, it's also got a distortion that's so good that you can basically use it on anything from like progressive metal to the lo-fi thing that's playing right now in the background that I use this on. I mean, speaking of that lo-fi track, special thanks to my buddy David who cut the lead guitar part on there. If you dug that, he's actually available for session work. So if you are in need of any lead guitar work, anything from chill jazzy type stuff all the way to like face melty shreddings, he can do all that. He's awesome to work with. So I will leave a link to his Instagram in the description below. So that's it for this video. I hope you dug it. If you did, please do consider leaving a thumbs up and subscribing, because there's a lot more cool stuff like this coming down the pipe. Down in the descriptions below, you'll find links to all the gear that I use in the video, as well as a PayPal donation link, which is what I'm going to be using to kind of fund everything else on the channel moving forward. I'm not going to take any money from any builders, and I'm not going to do any paywall stuff like Patreon or anything like that. So if you do enjoy the content and you feel like donating, that would be fantastic, and I would be forever grateful. Also in the description below, you'll find links to my Discord and my Twitch channel, and it would be awesome if you would come over there and hang out. That said, I hope you are staying happy and staying healthy, and I hope I see you around soon. Take it easy.